Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second session in the Digital Workplace Learning Series. I'm Karen Mann with NCDIT's Enterprise Collaboration Services Division, and we're excited to kick off this 8-week series, which we announced at our Digital Workplace Success Summit, which took place August 6th, both in person at Wake Tech and online. We had almost 400 people show up in person and nearly 2,000 people online that day. I've put a few links in our Q&A, which is where you can ask questions of our presenter. And in that Q&A, you will see the videos and presentations from our Digital Workplace Success Summit in the Q&A. I've also placed a link to the main page for the series that we've got going on right now. These free sessions are taking place twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. through October 15th. Each session is designed to help you build practical skills, deepen your understanding of essential tools, and discover new ways to work efficiently and securely. We also have many resources available on our Enterprise Collaboration Services SharePoint site, and you'll have a link to that as well. One of those resources is a whole page on Copilot resources and training. We also have the All Things M365 user group, where you can discuss Copilot and other M365 products with users throughout state government. Finally, we'd love to get your feedback on this session. Your feedback helps us tailor our future trainings to meet your needs. Today's session is the Copilot Agent briefing with John Parrott of Planet Technologies. If you attended the Digital Workplace Success Summit, you know that John's session was incredibly popular, and so we're really excited to have him back today. If you have questions, please add them to the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to John.
Thank you so much, Karen. And yes, my name is Jonathan Parrott, just like the bird, and it is annoying how much I like crackers. However, with a last name like Parrott, you learn to have a pretty thick skin, and that has allowed me to be able to stand in front of people and talk about things that I'm truly passionate about. And in this case, Copilot really does fit that bill. So I really love being able to come to people like you and having these large-scale discussions about how this new type of technology can really impact you. But let's talk about what our cadence for that talk is going to be like today. So first of all, I want to have a conversation about the mindset going into our discussion about Copilot and Copilot agents. Because I feel like if you understand the direction on which I will be giving on how to use these tools and honestly how to build a relationship with them, it's good to have the right mindset in mind first. Then we'll go ahead and talk about what Copilot is and how it's distinctly different from our agents. Now, with our agents, there are going to be a few different types of these agents. So I'm going to cover the different types as well as going ahead and doing some demos for you in understanding how these are actually functioning and seeing some real world examples on what you could be doing. I'll also have you show you under the hood on how I created some of these agents to go ahead and get you started. Then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about governance, when you can start building things on your own and when you might want to get your IT departments involved, and then finally give you some direction in what your next steps really should be. However, during this whole entire session, I do want it to be very clear that this is for you. So as Karen has repeatedly said, and I'm going to say one more time, go to the top of the screen, click on that Q&A, and whenever a question pops up, please throw it in the chat. Not only do we have really knowledgeable people behind the scenes that might be able to answer some of your questions, but there may be a few times where we have some technical wait times with Copilot, and I'll be able to jump in and hopefully answer a few questions in the meantime. So please have that prepared as we jump on into talking about the mindset of AI. Now, this is something that I am very firm on, and that is we see so much in the news how AI is really going to be taking over people's roles and jobs in the future. That is not today. With our AIs that we have right now, the best way to really think about it is to see it more as a supportive assistant. It's not here to do your job, it's here to make you better at your job. You are always going to stay in control, and that's really a mandate that comes through even the very name of the product, Copilot, because that means that you are the pilot. Because you are, that means that everything that you do is what the Copilot is going to be able to piggyback on. For those of you that don't have a full understanding of how Copilot works, at the very core of Copilot is an LLM, or basically a large language model that contains all of this information that it's using in order to generate answers. So some of the core understanding that you might have, such as science and history, are built into these LLMs, as well as literature, conversation, and how to actually interact with each other. Now, these LLMs are actually switchable in your new environment. In a little bit during the demonstration portion, I'll show you where you can actually change the standard LLM, which is ChatGPT. And for you, you can actually now switch that to Anthropic's Claude, which between you and me, I think is the superior model, but we'll be able to let you test that on your own. However, with this core, you are going to be surrounding that core when you have the full license for Copilot with your Microsoft environment. So that means your Outlook, your OneDrive, your Teams, all of those are going to be now available. Your SharePoint files, your OneDrive files are now sourceable and findable when you have that full license. But if you don't have the full license, there is still one final layer that everybody gets, and that's access to the World Wide Web, where it's able to pull that information and provide you the best answers possible. However, while this means that it's going to be really eager to help you and want to supply you all of this information, Copilot is not going to be you. In fact, what I like to tell people is that Copilot is really more like an intern, very eager to help, has access to all of the same information that you might have, but is never going to understand the nuance of the job that you're doing. So therefore, as we really start talking about Copilot, I want us to recognize that the limitations it has is not really supposed to keep it from doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be assisting you, giving you more time for the reason that you were hired, for the skill set that makes you valuable to the organization. And we can offload some of those skills to our Copilot. So we can obviously ask for questions about the world while at the same time asking questions about specific files and information. We can use it to go ahead and create rough drafts for us that we ourselves can go through, edit, and change, giving us the ability to jump to the editing process of most projects. We can use it to catch up, to fill us in on information that we might have missed, or with everything going on in our brains, sometimes it falls out. Copilot can pick it back up and remind us of it. And finally, as we start talking about agents, Copilot's going to be able to help us act out specific skills that we might need. And with all of its connection points across the M365 profiles, it's going to be a truly valuable intern to you. However, today we're not talking about just simply Copilot. We're talking about the next evolutions of Copilot. And there's a few different ways that those look. There are three main ones, though, that we can identify. And the first one is kind of a gray area between our standard Copilot usage and our full-on usage of Copilot agents. And that's Copilot notebooks. Notebooks basically serve as a contained area in which Copilot to use. So think of taking a copy of your intern and saying, hey, I'm not needing you to worry about all of my work. I need you to only simply worry about these files that I'm handing you. And within a Copilot notebook, you can upload data and then have a version of Copilot that looks at nothing else except the data that you've loaded in. Not only that, but you can customize instructions that you're going to be giving to this notebook and how it needs to behave and respond and give back answers. However, that is really just a stepping stone to our next style of agent, and that's our standard Copilot agents. These are built more to be your personal assistant, that upgrade from our intern. And with your personal assistant, it's going to be able to assist you on tasks that you're doing on a regular basis and already have pre-programmed instructions in how to behave in specific situations. So if there's tasks that you're constantly having to do, whether it's rewriting documentation or possibly analyzing information for specific data points, your personal assistant is going to be there willing to help you. However, there is an evolution beyond even our standard Copilot agents, and those are agents built within Copilot Studio, a separate application. Now, the reason why these are kept separate is because this mostly is going to be for power users or IT professionals to use. But even if you're just a standard user, you can come up with a lot of great ideas that you're going to want this Copilot Studio for, because they really act as contractors. Not only are they given specific sets of instructions and limited information, but they are also able to perform tasks within the Microsoft environment. For those of you that are familiar with Power Automate, you are going to be able to see that Copilot can now leverage all of those amazing tools to send emails, to create line items within a SharePoint list, to move documentation, to start approval workflows. You're going to actually be able to have an agent that's not just regenerating or retrieving information, but is actually making effective change within your environment. However, one thing that we really need to understand is where we can really start understanding these core principles that separate our Copilot experience from our Copilot agents. And for that, I want to go ahead and start with Copilot notebooks. Now, with the notebook, again, we are going to be gathering resources from across the board. So therefore, you can grab information from SharePoints, OneDrives, uploaded files from your computer. All of that can then be put into one space alone, kind of segregated. However, they are still going to be connected to the Microsoft environment. So therefore, if you are linking a SharePoint file or a OneDrive file and somebody makes a change to it, your notebook is always going to have the latest and greatest information. But the real bonus of this is not just getting information into one place, but it's having a Copilot that is now only focused on that information and being able to deliver answers to you that you can truly trust because it's not going to be getting so much information from other locations. And the great thing is these notebooks are going to be reusable. So whether you need it for a specific project, maybe you want to make one for your department, maybe you want to make one for just your own personal edification or needs, you are going to be able to reuse these notebooks time and time again to get that information that you're looking for. But that's a lot of talk. Let's actually see some action. Before I jump into a demo of our notebooks, though, I do want to go ahead and have a little bit of a disclaimer. First of all, what you're going to be seeing today is not actually within the Alabama tenant or your environment for Microsoft. I'm using a demo environment, so things may be a little bit off from what you see in your normal day-to-day view. However, if there are things that are missing that you're really looking for, or things that I'm showing that you just can't seem to find, contact your IT professionals and they'll be able to help you bridge the gap into what I'm explaining today. All right, let's go ahead and jump into talking about notebooks. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to head to the World Wide Web. For this case, I went to office.com. Now, Microsoft is really trying to pivot to make Copilot so much more core of its elements. So where office.com used to immediately take you to the homepage for all your Microsoft needs, it's now labeled as m365.cloud.microsoft. However, if you still type in office.com, it gets you to that same location, and it's a lot easier for me to remember. So again, this is kind of our homepage for everything Microsoft, and that's no surprise that whenever we first load into this page, we're taken to the new chat button for Copilot. Many of you are probably already using this tool, and I will tell you, if you're wondering about some of the talk I had earlier, whether you have a standard license or a full license for Copilot Studio, you can always identify that by seeing the toggle button at the very top of your screen. If you see something that says Work and Web, that means that you have the full license of Copilot, and that means you're going to be able to access all of these different files and features very easily. However, if you don't have this toggle, that means you only have the standard license, where it's only going to look for web information. That doesn't mean that you're going to be limited in some of these tools. There will be some workarounds that we can talk about, but at the same time, just understand that a lot of things I'll be showing today might be a little bit different for those full users. The other thing that I wanted to show you that I've been asked to talk about is the fact that once again, you have a new LLM that's available to you, a new core for your Copilot. So if you head over to this auto button in the top right-hand corner, you can see normally that you can choose how Copilot answers you. Whether it's a quick response or thinking deeper, you normally have those options. But now, if you have Claude enabled, you'll be able to see options down below this screen as well that talk about whether you want to use a ChatGPT model or a Claude model. If you've been using Copilot a lot and now see that Claude model available for you, definitely give it a try. You'll see a distinct change in how it answers questions, and in my opinion, it does a much better job of generating content for you. But we're not here to talk about standard Copilot. We're here to talk about our advanced evolution of Copilot. So I'm going to first come to notebooks. Now, notebooks are going to be located in our left-hand rail, and if you scroll down, you should be able to see them. Now, if you are using Copilot within Microsoft Teams or your Outlook applications, you probably won't see notebooks as available. These are only really accessible right now within the environment of going to the home page, which is office.com or m365.cloud.microsoft. So if you're looking to follow along, that's the direction I'm going to aim you at. But let's actually talk about building one of these notebooks. I'm going to click on my All Notebooks button, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the new notebook. If this is something you're doing for the first time, this screen that's popping up right now will probably be there to greet you. So from here, we can go ahead and name this notebook. And in this case, I'm going to create a sample project. It's going to be about sprockets. So I'm going to call this the Sprockets Notebook. And now I want to add documentation to this notebook. And in that regard, first of all, it's going to bring up a lot of documentation that I've already been touching or using or opened lately. It also has a space where I can drag files from my computer in order to upload into this notebook. But probably the most powerful feature is over here in the top right-hand corner, where I can upload from my computer, where I can add links to different websites that I might want this notebook to have access to. Or I can go ahead and attach cloud files, which if I click on, I'll be taken to a screen that immediately looks like my OneDrive folders, which I can search through. So normally whenever we have this button open, it's going to take us to that screen that you just saw. That takes you not only to your OneDrive, but if you continue to follow the left-hand rail, it's going to actually take you to the different SharePoints that you have access to as well. So you can pull that documentation from all of these different resources. But with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and come in here. And I'm going to look for anything related to sprockets that I might have access to. So what we're going to do is go ahead and grab some of these sprocket documents that are already being listed. And as you can see, they're being brought in under my selected references. So anything revolving around sprockets that I just have quick access to, I'm going to load in. But normally, you'll be able to click on that blue puffy cloud, get access to everything that you need. Now I'll go ahead and click Create. And this is now going to take me to a screen that doesn't look all that different from standard Copilot. Once it's done loading, you're going to be able to see that, oh, I have a little box where I can put in my sample prompts. I can also look at all the different reference documentation I have down here below. So now I can come in and actually start asking questions of this Copilot and how I want to interact with these documents. So I can say something like, what is the current status of sprockets? And it's once again only going to look at that information I loaded. It's not going to go anywhere else. Find answers for me and be able to deliver them in a way that is going to be helpful for me. However, there may be times where the way that Copilot delivers information is not exactly what you're looking for, or there could be specific reasons why you want data broken up into different areas. Now, of course, this is taking way too long for me to actually explain. Let me go ahead and go into a Q&A real quick while it brings up these answers. See if anybody has listed anything. It looks like we've only got some pertinent links that Karen has posted. So if you want to go ahead and access some of those links are going to be available there. But once again, if you want to ask some questions, go click on the Q&A at the top of the screen and you get some more help. Karen, what have you got?
Yep, we do have one question. I'm seeing it in the chat from Trish. Can you include certain web pages in your set of resources that you'd like to include in your notebook's limited universe? For example, NC Administrative Code or EPA web pages.
So if they're public-facing web pages, yes. If they are internal-facing web pages, like on SharePoint, that's where things get a little bit tricky. You should be able to link them, but I have seen some inconsistencies in that. However, what I can tell you is that in the commercial environment, where all of the new toys get to go first and tested and vetted before they're given to you, we are seeing that being more and more prevalent as an option. So I would say definitely try it and just know in the future, it's only going to get better. And as you can see, Sprockets has now come back with all of that information that I'm looking for. Perfect. However, there's going to be an important element that really sets notebooks apart from just using standard Copilot. Other than the fact that we are able to actually use this notebook as a way to contain information within a container, we're also going to be able to use this to basically make sure that there are specific instructions that my Copilot will follow. So as you can see here, underneath the title of my notebook, I can click on Add Copilot Instructions. And from here, I can actually set up things that the Copilot needs to follow before delivering answers to me. Now, instructions are going to be vitally important across all of the different things that we're showing today. So I'm going to show you just some very base options that you could put in for instructions. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say, when applicable, please use tables over paragraphs. I don't know about you, but sometimes I read a table a whole lot better than I read a whole entire paragraph. I can also say, please give answers as if you were an acting project manager. Now, this is where you can really give these Copilot experiences a role to follow. I'll tell you in my own personal life, I have an agent that I've built to act as a sassy assistant from a film noir. So it's always calling me gumshoe. It's talking about going through the files of the caseloads, which are just my projects. It talks about lighting metaphorical cigarettes before delivering the answer to me. It's a whole lot of fun. But at the same time, you can also use it for business purposes as well, saying, hey, I need you to think like a project manager, or I want you to answer these questions like you're a fifth grader if you need more simplified answers. You can really regulate how that Copilot is going to respond to you and the personality that it has. Now, one element that I try and put into almost anything that I create nowadays is the fact that there are many people that have only limited time to digest information. And I actually learned a trick in helping somebody understand Copilot. And so for most of my notebooks and agents, I always write in, please always respond as if someone has if the user has dyslexia. Now, I put that in specifically because I learned it from working with someone that actually had dyslexia and was struggling with Copilot. After I showed them that they could actually put that into their prompt, it started bringing back answers in much shortened realms, highlighting the specific and important areas with bolding text, and really limited the information into essentials. And honestly, every time that I've been using it, it's been incredibly powerful for me, even somebody who does not have that. So I would suggest giving that a try, and also thinking about how possibly Copilot could be addressed for people with needs in your areas as well. So now if I ask the question, what is the latest update on this project? We should see a very different answer. Well, first of all, it's already going to give me some forgiveness because I've already misspelled something. But at the same time, as it delivers back these information, we should see it actually change the way that it's referencing it and delivering it to us. Now, I see that Ali is asking a question in the chat. Can this notebook access local OneNotes? You can go ahead and link this to notebooks that are being saved on a SharePoint or within your OneDrive, yes. However, what I can tell you is that this version of Notebook is actually going to get an overhaul. We're seeing it in the environment already in the commercial, where it's intrinsically linked with your OneNote experience. And so actually so much of what you'll be doing within Copilot notebooks will be happening within OneNote. And there'll be added features like podcast recordings, being able to create charts and graphs on the fly, all sorts of great features that are coming. So it's good to have practice with these notebooks now, so that as these new features add on, you're going to be prepared for them. I know many people might say, oh, I'll wait till it's done. I don't think this is ever going to be done. It's better to hop in now and get the experience you need to stay afloat. But as you can see from the answer below, we now have a bunch more tables. And as it brings back information, there are bolded areas that really bring that content like visibly to me. And you can see that there's a lot more text as well that's been shortened to easily understand and digest. So these notebooks can have a variety of purposes, from creating one just for your department. So when new people join your department, they have their own how-to guide into where to get answers, where to get resources, and really cut down on that time of having to ask those questions that I think any of us, when we get a new job, feel awkward asking. At the same time, you can use it for specific projects, and actually, using the share button, share it amongst a group of people. So therefore, everybody has access to the same relevant information. They know all the documentation that's being brought in, and everybody can use it to stay abreast. There are multiple different use cases for notebooks, and if you can think of some and you want to throw them inside the Q&A, I'll be happy to explain if I think that those will be viable or not when I get the chance. However, notebooks are only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the other types of things that we can be sharing when it comes to these advanced versions of Copilot. So next up on our magical mystery tour, we are going to talk about agents, the full-on ones that can be your personal assistant. Now, these agents kind of come in some different flavors, as I was explaining earlier. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is retrieval agents. So these retrieval agents are our basis form where they're able to retrieve information and synthesize it for us. So whether that's searching the web and bringing you back information in the form of a memo, whether that's being able to source your documentation and bring you back something that is more of a summary, whether that's actually being able to enable it to say, hey, I need you to create with this specific thought in mind, we're able to utilize these retrieval agents to really help us automate some of the process that we might have to do on a pretty ready basis. If you are the type of person that is saving prompts because you reuse them over and over again, agents might be your answer from no longer having to do that. However, there is going to be a subset of these retrieval agents that are specific to SharePoint. And those are going to be the ones that act as basically the custodians of your SharePoint. Having access to information located directly there, helping you find files and information across the themed SharePoint, and at the same time, helping manage some of the sprawl as well, because it's able to access different SharePoints while bringing it back to one source to be able to ask questions to. However, those two agents are really built for the standard user. Anybody can be building these, and in fact, I'm going to show you some great ways to actually have Microsoft help you build these agents. However, as we get into the more advanced agents, that's again where we're going to want power users and AI or IT to really get involved. Because we're going to have task agents that are going to be able to perform actual actions within your Microsoft ecosystem. And while they're not fully available yet, in the near future, you're also going to get autonomous agents, meaning that agents that can work on a time schedule or look for certain events within your Microsoft ecosystem and fire off following your instructions without you ever having to worry about it or interacting with it. Don't worry, no Skynet though. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about these agents in some demonstrations. So I'm now going to take you back to my screen, and I'm going to show you some of the agents that you already have access to today because Microsoft has already enabled some great ones. The first one I want to show you is Researcher. Now, Researcher, I've been told, has been recently turned on for your environment. And if you've ever run into an issue where you're like, man, Copilot's really great at delivering these small to medium-sized answers, but I wish that it could help me with these larger scale projects, Researcher is where you're going to want to go. Microsoft has already had built-in instructions to this agent to ignore some of the limitations that are usually linked to your Copilot experience and be able to provide a ton of information. So therefore, I can come in here and say something like, can you make a 15-page paper based on the following documents? And from here, I can click on that simple plus icon and upload my content as I normally would. Now, for those of you that may have tried this in the past, you know that Copilot is a little hesitant to do that much work because of that pull. However, because this agent has a specific process in mind, it is actually able to perform these tasks. And in fact, I'm able to pull in information from the web and M365 at my choice with just a simple toggle switch, making sure that it has access only to the content I want as it's generated. Now, one of the drawbacks of this project is the fact that if I were to run this, it could take up to 10 to 15 minutes to actually deliver the answer. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and show you one that I've already asked for. So I went ahead and asked to talk about the evolution of Microsoft with Copilot over the last few years. And as you can see, it was able to develop so much content for me, way beyond what is normally allowed within a standard Copilot conversation. At the very end of this screen, I am able to scroll down and actually click on a Convert to Word button and immediately have this opened up in a Word document for me to jump in and start editing. So if you're looking for that larger scale project that you can work with Copilot on, this could be that answer. Boom. However, this is an agent that Microsoft has built, but that does not limit us to only what Microsoft is providing. We can start creating our own custom agents, like I'm going to do with this legal document stylist. This is a document that I have specifically built so that it can actually help me take anything that I write and have it double check against a document that has all of the information about from my legal department, how things need to be said, how things need to be approached before I release it to a general public. So I'm going to come in here and say, can you review this document and tell me any parts that I need to change? I'll go ahead and link that document as I normally would if my cloud files will actually behave this time. There's the one I'm looking for. Perfect, right there. And now I'll go ahead and run this. Now, what this agent is actually doing in the background is I've uploaded a specific document to it, and in my instructions have noted, hey, you need to follow this guideline, this template, this instruction manual whenever there's documentation that I need to load in. And as you can see, it's even asking me some follow-up questions into what I need to do or what I'm requesting of it. I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead and review that document the way that I'm hoping and just give me those answers back. But I have also enabled it to go ahead and rewrite documentation at the same time. However, I want to get a little bit better at this tool, so I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, teach me these elements about the legalese that I need to know so I can make my documentation better in the future. And as you can see, it's already starting to bring up some changes that are required from my document, citing my legal style guide that I have referenced earlier, and can actually be now customized for that need. Let's go ahead and jump under the hood and see how this was actually built. So I'm going to get into my edit menu for this agent, and you're going to see that I have my title, I have a description of the agent, and then I have my instructions, just like I had with notebooks earlier, except now a little bit more robust. I've given it a purpose. I've given it a general guideline, some skills that I want it to have, step-by-step instructions and how I want it to behave, error handling and limitations, feedback and iteration, what a good example of an interaction looks like, and how I want it to do follow-up and closing elements. As I continue to scroll down, you'll see that I have areas of knowledge that I can fill in. I can go ahead and give it access to SharePoints I have access to Teams I have access to Outlook emails, to websites. I can either pull in specific documents, which I have down below here in the legal style guide. I inserted that from SharePoint. It now knows that's the document it needs to pull from. And then I came down here under capabilities, where I'm able to go ahead and say, yes, make Word documents, but you know what? I don't think you're going to need to create agents. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off so you don't even suggest it. So I built this agent from scratch, and I can actually continue to tinker with it within this edit menu. But let's say you're wanting to get started with agents right away. How can you actually get this good so fast? So first thing I'll tell you is always have trial and error. I've never seen these type of agents get to a state that they can't be fixed or reutilized. So always try and experiment and try some things. However, if you do need help, whenever you click on this new agent button, we already have some assistance waiting for us. And that is an agent builder agent, meaning that Microsoft has already created an agent to help us build better agents. So I can come in here and say, I need an agent that will translate documentation into French, Spanish, and Arabic, and then create 3 copies of the document, 1 in each language. So I just have to come up with my thought, with the dream in mind. And this agent builder is going to go ahead and work behind the scenes, building out my agent the way I need. And as you can see, it's already designed it for me. There's my document translator. It's given it a description, a purpose, knowledge, so on and so forth. This is a great way to go ahead and get started with agents, but I challenge you, as you start using them, come into your instructions. You have the full capability of coming in and editing these so you can add on or make changes as you need to. But this is a great way to get those agents started right away, the hopeful needs that you are going to want them to fill in. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and look at one of the questions from the chat before I continue on. And Colin says, what are the best practices in putting in prompts, separate lines, complete sentences, etc.? Great question. And I will tell you, if you search online, there are some great ways that you can actually break down a prompt almost like you were diagramming a sentence back in high school. Basically, you have the task that you wanted to achieve, you want to have the role that you wanted to take, whether that's act as a project manager or act like a teacher, whatever you might want to throw in there. Then you're going to want to go ahead and give it some sort of who is the audience for this. Sometimes it's going to be what you're generating out. Sometimes it's going to be yourself. So think about yourself abstractly. Is it the audience, a person that knows a little bit about this subject, knows a lot about this subject, so on and so forth. So you'll find elements like this, but honestly, whenever you're interacting with this tool, it's me going back to my examples I was putting earlier, where I was saying, treat it like an intern or treat it like a contractor. Think of it as somebody that's come onto the job that wants to help, that has some special skills, but needs you to really fill them in on the nuance, to explain to them in ways that might make sense to them. And here's one of the biggest things. One prompt might not always get you what you're looking for, but a conversation most likely will. So if Copilot comes back with something that's not exactly what you're looking for, continue the conversation. Tell it what's wrong. Tell it what you want it to fix. Give it the information that maybe it was missing. Again, treat it like that intern or the contractor and help fill in the spaces to get the most out of it. That's going to be the same in working with agents as well. I will go ahead and look at another chat that was put in saying, and it doesn't have a name attached, do agents need to be built to utilize open evidence in clinical queries for medical questions? That is a very deep question that I could spend way more time on. So whoever posted that in the chat, what I would suggest is reaching out to your IT department and really talking with them through the different connections that can be made. I am going to show you some advanced version of agents that may have a little bit more capabilities there that might also help answer these questions as well. But let's go ahead and jump into those. So as I was talking about, these are just simple retrieval agents. You can also access agents directly on your SharePoints as well. Up in the top right-hand corner, you can go ahead and click on this little icon, and there will be Copilot ready and waiting. Every single SharePoint has a built-in Copilot that becomes an expert on all the documentation and pages and SharePoint lists that are actually built into it. However, we do have the ability to create our own separate agents within our SharePoints as well, giving them specific purposes. So for example, maybe you have an HR site, but you want to create specific agents for helping with PTO time or bereavement leave or understanding questions about their policies and insurances. If that's the case, you can come under the New button and actually create agents directly from here. Now this screen is going to look very similar to what we saw before. It has a name, it has a purpose. If we pop over to behavior, you'll actually be able to see that we have agent instructions that we can write in again. Sadly, we don't have that helper agent that we had before. You're going to have to manually do this, but you can always talk to Copilot and have it suggest instructions for what you're trying to build. But the biggest change that comes from a SharePoint agent is that while this agent is only going to live in this SharePoint, it can access documentation in very unique ways. So right now it's looking at everything on this SharePoint, which is called PY Crisis. However, if I click on these three dots, I can actually say add contents from the site. And just like I was able to limit with notebooks, I can go in and say, hey, only use these specific files or folders. Not only that, but I can go ahead and actually search for other SharePoints and bring them into the fold as well. Either bringing in the whole entire SharePoint or bringing in only parts and pieces of documentation. So therefore, if you are a victim of the sprawl, where you have data located in multiple different places, whether that's multiple different teams and teams or different SharePoint pages, you are actually still going to have the capability to bring all of that to one location, to one SharePoint, where that agent is going to be able to be interacted with. Just a variation on that retrieval agent. However, we've only got a few more minutes left. I need to show you the hot stuff. So let's head back over, and I'm going to actually show you one of my favorite agents to use, my invoice agent. So I built this agent with a specific purpose to help write invoices and help people decide the things that they need to put in this invoice. So in this case, I'm going to tell this system that I need a new laptop and a new monitor. Now, normally an agent could automatically just start making random suggestions, but in this case, I built this agent specifically to reference an Excel document. In this case, this tech list demo, where I have a bunch of different SKUs, categories of different computers and elements that I might need, the different brands, the different model, processor, all this information is being saved in a cell. And now this agent is actually utilizing it to try and help me out. So as you can see, it's not just delivering the first option, it's actually helping guide me through the process. So I'm going to say, don't worry about the budget. Just give me a Mac and make it the biggest monitor you have. And because it's reading information, again, from this Excel document, it can actually look at screen size that are going to be available or creators of the technology that we're wanting to look at. So now whenever I come back and see these answers, which might take just a few seconds, I'm going to go ahead and click on New Posts and see what has also been added to the chat. Sam asked, will starting a prompt to create an agent ensure that all attributes of the agent are populated? Most of the time, yes. However, you will see that sometimes that agent will ask more questions, such as, what documentation do you want to load in? Or what features do you want me to turn on and off? So again, continuing that conversation is important. Next up is Can I tell Copilot to create an agent based on an existing one, like save as, so I don't have a starting point and then modify it mildly or starting over? We'll be able to do that a little bit more in our Copilot Studio experience, but in your case, in building probably those standard agents, all you have to do is copy those instructions and repaste them in where you're going and make those edits from there. Sadly, right now, agents aren't able to reference each other in that way. But as you can see, it's gone ahead and created a quote for me. It's saying, hey, this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to look like. I'll say, go ahead and send the email. And like I was saying before, Copilot can actually build upon these agents with Power Automate skills. So in this case, whenever I go ahead and head over to my email section, I should be able to see, there we go. So there we already have built that whole entire quotation, and I've sent it to the person that needs to have it. In this case, me as well. However, you can actually put in specific templates from Word or show Copilot, hey, this is what an invoice needs to look like if you have some set parameters, and it can actually fill in those spaces, generate those for the email, and continue that process along as well. Let's get into something that maybe is a little bit more detailed. So for this one, this is my Microsoft issue logger. Now, some of you, you know who I'm going to be talking about, don't like filling out IT tickets. And you like to put things like, it's broken, please come fix it. Well, you know what? As an IT person, I take umbrage to that because I want to be prepared when I come to your desk in order to help you. And whenever I turn that power button on and off again, I want to make sure that that's actually a step that's going to be worthwhile. So I built an agent that's going to help me make better tickets. So I'm going to come in here and say, I am having an issue with my Microsoft, we'll just say Word, spell check. Oh, actually, I used that one yesterday. Let's try a new one. I am unable to use dictation. Now, when I first built this agent, Copilot was so eager to help, it tried to solve the problems. And I had to specifically in the instructions tell it, hey, you're not allowed to help. You're only supposed to collect information. But what you can do is ask good follow-up questions. Information that an IT professional might need in order to help fix this issue much more quickly. And so now you'll see that this is now asking questions. I can say, no error message. It's grayed out. It's worked in the past. I'm using the online version. And it's only this program. So I've answered all of the questions. I didn't even have to spell them out. I didn't have to go into great detail, but I'll go ahead and now send that in. Now, what the Microsoft Logger is doing is actually taking that information and not just re-splitting it out into another space, kind of like what we saw with the invoice, but it's actually synthesizing this data and recreating it into ways that are going to be useful for me to use. So in this case, what it's going to do when it finally is done, because I don't want to pop over, it's a bit of a surprise. I'm kind of into presentation if you haven't figured that out. I mean, look behind me. Now Okay, I don't want us to run out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and show you where this item is going to go once it's actually loaded in. And that is this specific line. Oh, it should have just came in actually. Word dictation grade. And you'll see in my full description, the user reports that in Microsoft Word Online, the dictation feature is grayed out. They do not receive any error messages, and the feature has worked in the past. The issue is isolated to Word Online, as the microphone works fine in other applications. Now, I didn't type that in. That just came in a few seconds ago. You didn't see me do that. In fact, you actually saw that I didn't type any of that, but Copilot was able to take those fragmented pieces of information and create fully thought out paragraphs to make this process easier, and created this whole entire line for me. And in fact, one thing that I'll show you, and we're running out of time so I can't do it live, is that I even built in redundancies. So that way, for example, a VP is unable to submit form. I've taught this agent that if somebody from the suite has an issue, automatically mark that as urgent. Put that to the top of the list. So I can actually tell Copilot not only the information I want to spit out, but different dependencies that I wanted to look for. Now, how did I build this agent? Now, once again, this is a power user tool or an IT professional tool. So in order to use it, I actually come to this web page, which is called Copilot Studio. This is going to be a great place for you to utilize when you're building out your large-scale agents, because there's more features here than in the standard retrieval ones. So for starters, the differences is I can actually change what model I'm using when it comes to my agent. You'll also see that under my instructions, I have these little boxes here. These boxes are actually representing actions that I'm wanting the Copilot to take. So when it reaches this point in my step-in-step process, it knows to follow that step to the T. You'll also see that I have a knowledge section. Before I was adding that legalese document, this is also where I added in that Excel document for that previous agent. But if I click on add knowledge, you're going to see that I have access to public websites, SharePoint, Dataverse, Dynamics 365, and even tools beyond that. There could be others that are enabled as well. So therefore, you can look beyond just your system and actually look for information other places. However, for those of you that have used Power Automate, this is really what hopefully is going to open your mind. Because under the tools section is where we can add in those same abilities that Power Automate has. So for example, I have this set to create a line item, just like I did before. And then I also said, go ahead and send an email with this information as well. If I come back to my inbox, you'll see that there's my Copilot user 2 is having an issue, it's having a description, and it's also giving me some advice on where to get started. So I'm able to have it do multiple different tasks at different parts of the process. And again, that's being brought in by here. But if I click into add tools, what you're going to see here is connection points to all of the Microsoft elements, and anything that might be outside of those boundaries you're already using, Copilot can access as well. So let's say that you want to go ahead and not have an agent send an email. Don't worry, you can have it draft an email, or you can have it read through your inbox and flag specific emails for you, or create events on your calendar depending on the conversation that's being had. So you can really customize these agents to work in the ways that make the most sense to you. So this has been kind of my overall ideas about how you can be using agents. But now let's talk about when you need to know to upgrade. What type of agent is going to be right for me? And in that case, I'm going to head back on over to my PowerPoint presentation. Looking in the question and answers real quick, not seeing anything there that is new. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to add. And in this case, what I want to talk about next is what do you need to know when you're building out these tools? So in this case, what I'm going to go ahead and say is that, hey, if you are going to be using it just for simple information, if you're wanting to just build those notebooks or the simple retrieval agents, go wild as a standard user. Don't feel limited in. However, if you want Copilot to actually interact with something or do something for you, get IT involved. They're going to be able to help tell you not only what is capable, but at the same time, maybe there's other agents that are doing something similar that you could add on to. They should be able to give you some perspective into really how to approach this problem. My general rule of thumb is if it's just for you, use that standard Copilot experience. That Copilot agent, that retrieval agent, you can build in office.com. However, If you're going to be using it for a whole entire department or possibly the whole entire company, get into being a power user in the IT, use that Copilot Studio and pull that information from there. Finally, where can you actually start beginning? Because training is important. With all of these tools, we are approaching a new world where it's not just learning the guide to the tool, it's actually learning to build a relationship, understanding what Copilot knows and what it doesn't know, what you need to fill in as well. So my advice to you is get started someplace small. Think about one prompt that you've been asking Copilot to do over and over and over again, and try and make that prompt into an agent, just so you can have that quick reference. If you don't have something like that in mind, start asking around and seeing what other people are doing. What are the problem areas in their roles? And seeing if you can say, oh, maybe an agent could help rebuild that. At the very least, a great example that I like to do is building an agent that can review documentation with the purpose. So whether it's, hey, before I hand something into my boss, make sure to review it because this is what my boss values. Build an agent that can help you just recreate the documentation into a way that's going to make the most sense for you. Once you've built that small agent, you can start iterating on it, building different ones, building onto the ones that you've already created. And then once you feel like you've got those skills, you can go ahead and bring IT into the picture as well, making sure that they are part of this process and able to help you as well. However, if you do need a little extra help, Planet's here for you. We already have been helping people with industry briefings about agents and how they can be helpful in their own environments. We can do technical deep dives if you want to truly understand the nuts and bolts that are going on in the background. And at the very least, we can also show you this agent catalog that we're developing of different agents we've been building for many different industries and how we can plug these into your environment. However, that does lead me to the end of my part of the presentation today. I do see that we have a question, and I also see that I have a hand up. Let me answer the questions first. Jaman says, can you please email the PowerPoint to me? Absolutely, we will be providing this PowerPoint to everybody after the session, as well as access to the recording. So you should be able to get this again. And then finally, did Copilot help you create this presentation? It absolutely did. Now, I will say, I used Copilot to help build from a previous iteration of this. So it was able to help me knock out a few things that I made specific for you. But what I normally do is I write all of the content onto different PowerPoint slides, and I don't worry about formatting. And then I send my PowerPoint with all the information through Copilot just to make it pretty. And so yes, it did absolutely help me today. All right, well, the good news is if you guys still need help, do not worry. We're going to make sure that you have access to Planet or to the IT professionals that can help you the most, and Karen can really help direct that as need be. All right, Karen, back to you, and thank you so much for your time today.
All right, thank you so much, John. It's been great having you here this week. We've learned a lot about Copilot. Any questions that we didn't get to today, feel free to reach out to me, and if we can't help you at DIT, we will get them over to John. For next week, as I said, this is an 8-week series of sessions. We hope you will join us for various sessions throughout the next couple of months. But next week, we also have a presenter from Planet Technologies, and we're going to be talking about Power Platform fundamentals. So again, I put the link in the Q&A for how to register for each session. Hope you go there and do that. If you're not a member of the All Things M365 user group, that's a public group and you can join it. So please do so and start interacting with us and with other users around the state. So with that, have a great day and hope to see you next week at our Power Platform sessions.